Lord of the Rings, Book 1, written by J.R.R. Tolkien, is part of the Fellowship of the Ring, published in 1954, and part of the Trilogy of the Lord of the Rings. But it was all originally written as one cohesive story, but because the publisher stated that it would not sell as a single book, it was edited down to a trilogy and further formatted as a 6 parts within the trilogy. And so today I'm going to be talking about, I believe it's the first 12 chapters that make up Book 1 of Fellowship of the Ring, because there's enough content to justify a full video just talking about that. There's so much information that he packs in there, and character development as well as story. So in Book 1, Frodo is tasked by Gandalf to deliver the ring to Rivendell, which is one of the elf kingdoms in Middle-earth, to put it in better hands, hands that are going to know what to do with it. And as he is tasked with this, Sauron, the enemy, is sending his agents, the Nazgul and the Ringwraiths, to track down the ring. And so it's a bit of almost like an espionage thriller in Book 1 of these secret missions and needing to stay hidden and use aliases. Frodo Baggins takes on the alias of Underhill. And so all of that is very thrilling and intriguing to start out this trilogy. I first read The Lord of the Rings about 5 years ago, and having at that point seen the films upwards of 30 times, I was reading it from a point of comparing to the movies more so than just enjoying it on its own merits. And so this time I've really been just taking it in as a piece of literature and appreciating the way that Tolkien structures his paragraphs with these beautiful, detailed descriptions of the scenes and the characters to really immerse its reader and paint a picture of this world that is fantastical and mysterious and rich in history, which is what Tolkien is known by everybody for, and why so many hail Middle-earth as the greatest fantasy world ever created. The character I think that sticks out the most to me reading it through this time, in Book 1 anyways, is definitely Tom Bombadil, because he comes into the story so absurdly. He is an absurd character, and so mystical and fantastic that it helps to shift the tone in a way that helps the narrative and the story to keep a pace. And that's one of the things that Tolkien I've been noticing through this read-through, is brilliant at. He is a master of shifting tone to match whatever the story calls for in a given moment. Tonal control is something that can really make or break a story, because you could, make things sort of obtusely silly, take you out of the immersion of the story because you realize this is just a silly story. But the way that Tolkien inserts moments of levity is with such thoughtfulness and care about the world and about the characters in it. So when Tom Bombadil comes into the story singing a song and just overall being this very big, jovial personality, it helps to release that tension of these cataclysmic, world-ending consequences of the ring. If the enemy gets a hold of this ring, it means the end of the world. for all the peoples of Middle-earth. So having Tom Bombadil, who is seemingly eternal and ancient, been there since the creation of this world, and in that sense he does come off almost like a symbol of Christ in many ways. And I know that Tolkien is not a fan of allegory, but Tom Bombadil, ooh, that's a big ant. That was a huge ant. All right, sorry, buddy. Tom Bombadil is great, and just a fun character in that way. I also couldn't help but think about Tolkien's past in the war and how he and his comrades probably communicated in some of the rapport that they had with one another when Merry, Pippin join Frodo and Sam on the quest. The banter that they have and that dynamic, I can't help but imagine that's how Tolkien and his comrades were as they were traveling across Europe and going to war. That being forced by the circumstances of reality at that time to go on this adventure that had world-ending consequences. Throughout these chapters, there's so many poems and songs to be enjoyed, some that serve for further world building, like a song that Aragorn, or as he's mentioned in these early chapters as Strider, sings about Beren and Luthien, which is a book that was partially written by Tolkien that his son Christopher finished later in life. That is a great read-through as well of this elf maiden, and I can't remember what race Beren was, but essentially, this love story of people from two different worlds and people groups coming together and falling in love and having to overcome great obstacles for their love of one another, and how that love fuels their ability to overcome. That's a really beautiful story that you get a glimpse of here, and that again is just one of those small details that shows you there's so much more to this world than you're seeing, than just the story at hand. And then another one of the favorite poems is written by Gandalf in a letter to Frodo when they get to Bree at the Prancing Pony, where they were meant to meet Gandalf, that reveals the foreshadowing of Aragorn. As a matter of fact, I will read that here because it's a truly beautiful poem. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that was broken. The crownless again shall be king. This, of course, is foreshadowing the return of the king with Aragorn in later books. Also, I forgot to mention, I did want to share this description that Tolkien has earlier in book 1 as an example of how he comes up with these really intricately and well-crafted paragraphs to paint a picture that you can imagine in your mind so clearly. The hobbits led their ponies up, winding round and round until they reached the top. There they stood and gazed about them. The air was gleaming and sunlit, but hazy, and they could not see to any great distance. Near at hand the mist was now almost gone, though here and there it lay in hollows of the wood. And to the south of them, out of a deep fold, cutting right across the forest, the fog still rose like steam or wisps of white smoke. For all of the beautiful language that Tolkien uses to describe things in the lovely poems There are some really bad ones that have not aged well. For instance, this one that Sam shares that he made up about the trolls from the Hobbit story. And it goes at the end like this: Donor boner. Troll's old seat is still the same, and the bone he boned from its owner. I don't know if those words mean something different in the 1950s in England, but as it goes in 2026, it doesn't have the tastefulness that you expect from what the rest of the book reads as. Other than that, though, I mean, there's just a wealth of world to be explored in book one of The Lord of the Rings, coming in at a little over 200 pages. I like how they separated it out into the 6 books because it is much more consumable to take it in parts as opposed to the whole. And of course, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, but you gotta pay attention to the parts to get the whole. So, great start to what I would argue is the greatest trilogy of all time. And I look forward to talking about book 2 very soon. Until then, God bless, and leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. What? You're not subscribed? You're watching this and you're not even subscribed? Why don't you do that? And let me know if there's any books that you'd like me to read in the future. By the way, it is about 100 degrees out here today, but it seemed only right to talk about The Lord of the Rings outside. So here we are.